Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep, and I mean really deep, into the true biological mechanisms behind stubborn belly fat. We're throwing out that outdated eat less, move more advice and uncovering what the latest science actually tells us. So think about this for a second. What if your belly fat isn't just a place where your body dumps extra calories? What if it's actually a rogue organ that generates its own stress? Seriously, this idea completely reframes our entire understanding of weight loss. If you've been fighting a stubborn midsection and it literally feels like your body is working against you, well, that's because it actually might be. Today, we're going to dismantle that biology and learn exactly how to turn your own hormones into an unfair advantage.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the visceral fat threat, more than just jiggle.
To really solve this problem, we first have to understand that fat is absolutely not all created equal. You've got subcutaneous fat, which is that soft, jiggly fat stored right under the skin. Sure, it might make your clothes feel a bit tight, but biologically speaking, it's relatively harmless. But then we have visceral fat, and wow, that is a completely different story. This is deep belly fat that literally wraps around your vital internal organs, your heart, your lungs, your liver. It physically strangles them. And the scary part is, it takes a relatively small amount of this specific fat to start causing some really serious disease. Visceral adipose tissue isn't just some passive storage depot for extra calories. It's an active endocrine organ. It has its very own metabolic and hormonal functions. It sits deep inside your abdomen, generating toxic substances, promoting systemic inflammation, and actively producing its own hormones. It is quite literally a rogue factory operating inside your body, and it's heavily linked to high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. Moving right along to section 2, the cortisol loop, your body's built-in stress factory.
So we know it's a rogue organ, right? But what exactly is it manufacturing? Well, 4 times. That is the shocking number you really need to remember here. The fat cells deep in your abdomen have 4 times the amount of stress hormone receptors, specifically glucocorticoid receptors, compared to regular fat anywhere else on your body. When you experience chronic stress, your adrenal glands pump out cortisol. And because of this 4x receptor density, your belly fat acts like a giant sponge. It pulls in that stress signal and locks fat down just to ensure your survival. But guys, it gets so much crazier. Inside this belly fat factory, your visceral fat is loaded with a very specific enzyme called 11-beta-HSD1. This enzyme actually takes the inactive cortisol that's just floating around in your bloodstream and reactivates it into potent fat-storing cortisol right inside the fat cell itself. No joke, your belly fat is literally generating its own localized stress hormones, completely trapping you in this vicious, self-sustaining loop. Now, if you doubt the sheer power of cortisol to completely alter human biology, just consider Cushing's syndrome. This is a medical condition that's characterized by extreme, chronic cortisol exposure. Look at the clinical manifestations. You see 81 to 97% of patients experiencing extreme truncal obesity, which basically means fat heavily concentrated in the belly. They suffer from severe muscle wasting in their limbs, facial rounding, and these wide purple stretch marks on the abdomen. This brilliantly illustrates that cortisol doesn't just make you feel stressed. It physically reshapes your entire body to hoard fat around your organs while simultaneously breaking down your muscles.
All right, on to section 3, the hormonal traps, estrogen, insulin, and timing.
Because stress isn't working alone here, let's walk through the steps of what we call the estrogen engine. Remember how we said visceral fat is an active organ? Well, it produces another enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase actually takes your good androgens, like testosterone, and converts them straight into estrogen. And higher estrogen levels signal your body to store even more fat in estrogen-sensitive areas, like your abdomen. It's a total vicious cycle that literally fuels its own growth. In fact, it's exactly why heavy drinking, which is highly estrogenic, by the way, leads to the classic beer belly.
So the crucial point is this. It's not always that you just have high cortisol overall. It's that you have mistimed cortisol. A healthy cortisol curve is supposed to spike in the morning to give you energy, and then it tapers off at night so you can actually get some sleep. But chronic stress flattens this curve out. When you have high cortisol in the evening, you get terrible sleep. And as the research clearly shows, sleep deprivation directly increases visceral fat because it synergizes with insulin to store fuel rather than burn it. It just leaves you tired, wired, and suffering from serious brain fog.
Now, what's really interesting is how we fight back. Section 4, the adrenaline exploit, hacking the beta-3 receptors.
We know the biology, right? So now we pivot to the solution. Visceral fat is incredibly sensitive to hormones. We just seen how it responds to stress and estrogen. But what if we could use that extreme sensitivity against it? Seriously, how do we turn this biological vulnerability, this crazy high receptor density in the gut, into an unfair advantage?
Well, the answer is adrenaline. Specifically, adrenaline targeted through something called the Norwegian 4x4 protocol. Visceral fat is totally packed with beta-3 adrenergic receptors. You can think of them basically as docking stations for adrenaline. To trigger them, we actually need to push our VO2 max. So you warm up, then you push at 90% of your maximum effort for 4 whole minutes. You recover for 3, and then you repeat the whole thing 4 times. This isn't just about burning calories, guys. This specific duration and intensity forces adrenaline to bind directly to those belly fat docking stations, triggering some really intense fat breakdown.
But listen, you can't burn fat if your body is actively trying to store it. The key to unlocking the fat cell is managing your insulin through an occasional 16-8 fasting protocol. When you fast, your insulin levels absolutely plummet. This increases an enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase, or HSL. Think of HSL as a little crew of workers inside your cells. When insulin drops, they get right to work breaking down stored triglycerides and dumping those fatty acids straight into the portal vein. That's a biological superhighway that sends fat directly to the liver to be burned for energy.
Section 5, the 30-day playbook, reclaiming your metabolic health.
We've got the science down, so let's actually put this all together into a fast-paced, actionable daily routine. Mastering your hormones completely requires circadian entrainment. So first thing in the morning, before you even touch your coffee, get 5 to 10 minutes of natural outdoor light. This spikes your healthy morning cortisol and anchors your circadian rhythm. Midday, you want to focus on stable meals and short walks to prevent those blood sugar crashes that trigger stress hormones. In the evening, dim your screens and take 300 to 500 milligrams of a high-quality magnesium. Magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker that calms your entire nervous system down. And finally, right before bed, do just 5 minutes of box breathing to manually shut down that cortisol factory and secure the 7 to 8 hours of sleep you need to prevent fat hoarding.
And this brilliantly illustrates how targeted food choices can literally hack your brain chemistry to block these fat-storing engines. First up, the protein preload. Eating 30 grams of protein just 20 minutes before a large meal releases gut hormones like GLP-1 and PYY. This physically slows digestion and tells your brain to just shut down hunger. Next, to break that estrogen engine we talked about earlier, try eating 1 cup of cruciferous veggies like broccoli every other day. They digest into a compound called DIM, which actually helps your liver excrete the bad fat-storing estrogen. Finally, adding just 7 grams of soluble viscous fiber daily has been clinically shown to slow digestion, stabilize your blood sugar, and physically shrink your waistline. So, we've covered the hidden dangers of the cortisol loop, the sneaky traps of estrogen and insulin, and the exact protocols you need to flip the switch on those beta-3 receptors. You now have the ultimate scientific manual to target and eliminate visceral fat. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Are you ready to stop fighting your biology and start exploiting it? Start implementing this playbook today and just watch your metabolic health transform. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to guide you through our next topic.